What's up guys, this is Maliss and welcome to the OCG Metagame breakdown number 10, 11, and 12. This might very well be one of the biggest breakdowns I've seen so far. As a matter of fact, it's probably the biggest compilation because it's 340 top performing decks from 64 tournaments during the span of almost, actually no, it's more like 2 weeks. And this is the last one before the ban list. The ban list didn't really change too much, honestly, because the best decks are still the best decks. If anything, Konami just made them even more the best decks by making sure that they hit everything in like the third, fourth, and fifth spots, which doesn't really matter too much, but first and second are the decks that currently exist, and nothing really changed. However, we did get the structure deck for Blue Eyes, which is, I mean, it's quite relevant, actually. This deck is already doing well, and it just came out. So imagine in a couple of weeks or months. Anyways, before we go any further, a friendly reminder to smash the like and subscribe button. It really motivates me a lot to keep existing. And make sure you watch the video until the end, don't be a bitch. Alright, so first things first, Ryzal is, yeah, it's kind of getting closer to like tier 0.5 category. Not really, but 34.4% is kind of scary. It's way more than the typical like tier 1 numbers that we see, like 20, 25. Anything that's above 30 is where it gets a little nasty because this is like more than a third of the representation. Not by a long shot, but still very dangerous. And Ryzal, I think, will just stabilize at like probably 40 to 45% after the ban list. And the reason for that is because Ryzal got a full pass. The only limitation was Bonfire to 1, if I recall correctly. Everything else, it just completely dodged. And honestly, it doesn't really matter too much because they do have more consistency cards. So Ryzal is still as consistent as ever. It really changes nothing. There's so many ways of searching your monsters. You can even play Small World if you're that thirsty. Although I don't necessarily recommend it. But still, this deck, really reminiscent to Mathmech, which is one of the reasons why it kind of interests me, but it's way too simplistic. It honestly, it just feels like the new Tenpai Dragon, but instead of OT King, you go first, you spam your board with a couple of rank 4s, you beat Nibiru, you beat hand traps in general, and you can play like 20-something hand traps, which is ridiculous. It's also very good at beating floodgates like Stygian Dirge and stuff like that. There can only be one, whatever. Rivalry is, it doesn't really matter too much because you do have that X-Ryzal that can send Mirror Logic Aggregator from your extra deck to the grave, and then you can negate any face-up card on the field until the end of the turn, if I recall correctly. However, you do struggle with Dimensional Barrier, Mischief of the Gnomes, anything that lingers. I will be making a full video on that as soon as I possibly can. Anyways, Maliss, yes, this is another very scary deck. It's a new deck from Crossover Breakers. There's 3 decks from that set, so obviously it's Ryzal, Maliss, and the other one is Apo Dracosis. But that one's dog shit as a deck. It's really just playable as an engine and like Voice's Voice. And even then, it's a lot of bricks, so you can argue that you don't really need it for anything. By the way, the TCG name is Ryugi. As a matter of fact, here we can see 9 Voice's Voice. 8 of them are playing without the engine, and only 1 is playing with a new engine. It really just changes nothing. As for Maliss, it's a deck where you benefit off of banishing your own cards, which is one of the reasons why Bestials are really nice in Maliss. You can banish your own cards, and it can kind of get you places. And also, this is one of those shifter decks. However, if you shift your opponent in Maliss, you cannot full combo. You're really just playing a control trap heavy, hand trap heavy deck, but you're not playing a, you know, something that just pops off. And Ryzal can also play shifter, but it prefers not to because you can still kind of interact a little bit with your graveyard with Node Ryzal, the field spell to, you know, put back cards on the bottom of the deck, draw a card, etc. But still, if you get shifted and you play Ryzal, you don't care. As a matter of fact, honestly, all the best decks, they really just do not care about shifter at all. Anyways, Tenpai and Maliss are pretty much on the same level, but Ryzal is drastically better than everything else. It's like triple the performance of the second best deck, which is concerning. Honestly, that's the best way to put it. Anyways, Snake Eye, yeah, most builds are playing Fiendsmith, Snake Eye, but no, I mean, not a lot of builds are playing Azamina still, and the reason for that is because people are pivoting towards Ghost Ogre and Droll and Logbird, and those cards are very, very, very good against the Snake Eye deck. So even though the Azamina cards added more consistency, and I guess they made it a little more resilient to like Nibiru and stuff like that, the deck honestly doesn't feel any much better like against like the small hand traps. You still lose so hard to like everything else. Even right now, even if you're watching this and the TCG kind of preparing yourself for YCS Niagara, you can do very well without the Azamina cards. The Azamina cards, I think, are very optional. If you want to play without that package, go ahead and do so, because it also makes you lose to Retelling C now. I will also make a full video on the Azamina package, because it is a good engine, but it's not overpowered, and I think it's overhyped, if anything. But yeah, that's the reason why people are not really playing the Azamina engine anymore. although we will still see an Azumina list in this video. Yubel, okay, this is not really relevant because the Yubel deck is kind of dead now, I mean, at least in the TCG. And also, this deck does not deal very well with Molchem before Aros, unfortunately. Or I guess fortunately, depending on how you see it. Centurion, okay, sure. Voice, as I said, this is one of the best decks by a long shot to deal with Molchem before Aros. It's not even funny. You give 0 to 1 draws to your opponent, depending on if you went like Diviner, Centurias, and then special summon the Diviner, well, the Novox from deck. Then sure, your opponent gets 1 draw, but that's it. You don't have to summon from the extra deck at all. That step where you go into the what's his face, the Link 2 to like summon back the thing on your opponent's turn, the Dynamundo, there we go. That is completely optional. You don't have to go into that. So yeah, it's a really good deck at just summoning gigantic monsters in like 2 summons and not really giving anything to your opponent. Even Molchemi Borrelia, it's not that much of a big deal. You can give like 1 draw to your opponent when you ritual summon, and then Novox comes back from the grave. So it's a very good deck overall at beating most hand traps. It doesn't really lose to like 1 card in particular. Shifter can still be good against you because, you know, you can't really Saphira, so you gotta actually ritual summon and then you lose all of your resources in the process. But still, apart from that, it's a solid deck. It just lacks a little bit in power level. Going second, not the best. However, there are some builds that are circulating online that are actually somewhat decent going second. And you don't necessarily need to play too many hand traps either. Alright, now we got Labyrinth, which I think is a very good deck into Ryzal because the trap cards are just nice overall. You don't really care about a lot of hand traps, and you can kind of break the board going second if you got a lot of those nasty board breakers like Karma Cannon and stuff like that. The issue is that the Ryzal Dreadnator, it's a huge problem for trap decks. It can destroy a bunch of cards over and over. It's annoying to have to deal with. It just, I hate that card, unfortunately. So that's one of the reasons why Labyrinth may be not worth playing, but we never know. This deck is also very consistent. Ryzal, I don't know, but yeah. Anyways, Blue Eyes, yeah, this is another one of those new competitive decks. I think it's tier 1, honestly. I really do think it is. It's just that we have to wait until the other decks kind of get nerfed, like Snake Eye, Yubel. Those decks will completely get... I mean, they're completely eliminated from the metagame now. So I think Blue Eyes is going to leapfrog them. And it's probably going to stabilize itself in the top 5, top 6, top 7 best decks. But yeah, again, this is... It's like first performance in the OCG format, and it's already doing relatively well. Anyways, Despia and Runic. So it's nice to see that Blue Eyes, a deck that was irrelevant for like the past, like, I don't even know, like 8 years or something, is back to being, you know, not too bad. Anyways, Memento, okay, sure, that's kind of not that great because it is pretty decent into 4 rows, but whatever. Magical Musketeer, Ritual Beast, Melodious, Sky Striker, Buster Blader, very similar to Blue Eyes, as in it also got new support because of the Link 1 monster, which meant that Sage with the Eyes of Blue, before it wasn't that great, but now it's actually full combo. It's really good, honestly. It does a lot. Fiendsmith Chimera, great deck. I had the pleasure of losing to that in the YCS. Far King, Flunderies, Infernoid, Rescue A, Salamangreed, Vanquish Soul, Atlantean. I don't know, the name should be Mermail. Anyways, Dragon Link, Raid Raptor. Fiendsmith, Raid Raptor? What the... I really don't understand the synergy, but okay, sure. Scareclaw, Sprite, Trickstar, White Forest, sure. Toy, Unchained, Gimmick Puppet. Only 1? Okay, yeah. And it's like barely hit in the OCG, wow. Snake Eye, what is this? Okay, whatever. How can this make sense? How can you play Ryzal that locks you under rank 4s and also play Snake Eye, Horus, and Fiendsmith? I have never been this confused in my life. Whatever this is, and yeah, okay, whatever. Alright, so Ryzal. Okay, so what is relevant here is the fact that honestly this deck is just really good at dealing with just about everything. They can beat Ghost Ogre on the Duo Drive. That's like kind of the gigantic sprite of the deck. But instead of special summoning a monster from the deck, you detach 2 materials, not a cost, from any Xyz monster on your field. Again, very similar to Gigantic. And then you search your deck for 2 Ryzal cards, which is obviously insane. But Ghost Ogre is really good against it because just like Ghost Ogre against Gigantic, it acts more like a Gamma. It negates and destroys just because there's no material on the resolution. So it's not like you can search anything. However, if you can have a Ryzal cross before, then you can negate any monster effect by detaching 1 material from one of your Xyz. So if you can summon a Duo Drive and give it a material, then Ghost Ogre is not going to do anything. Therefore, some people are playing 2 copies of the Field Spell now, because this card is just so good at beating the hand traps. And because of that, the hand traps are maybe a little less good, so people are starting to look into board breakers, which is exactly why the side deck of people, they're just designed to beat board breakers. Like, we got D-Bearer, Solemn Judgment. Even if you board breaker me, like Book of Eclipse Droplet, it's not going to do much of anything. And apart from that, not much that should really be explained. Going second, the best board breaker against the deck is evenly matched. You lose absolutely everything except the Dreadnator. But again, this card is nasty. Every single time your opponent activates a card or effect, you get to detach a material, you get to detach a material and then destroy a card on the field. And it's not once per turn. So as long as you have materials, you can use it again and again and again. And usually you're going to have 3 materials underneath, because when you summon it, it already has 2. And then its effect on summon attaches 1 Ryzal Xyz monster, or I think any Xyz monster from your graveyard to it as material, which is the reason why X Ryzal, you like to send Mirologic Aggregator so that you can attach it to the Dreadnator, and then when you detach, not only do you destroy a card, but also Aggregator negates something on the field. So yeah, a lot of really nice bonus hidden effects that you can have access to in this deck. It's honestly really cool. And by the way, it has 14 one-card starters, if I recall correctly. So yeah, 3, 6, 9. Every Ryzal monster other than Node is a one-card combo. Well, I mean, everyone that's being played. There's another one that just sucks, you shouldn't play it. But yeah, these are the ones that are actually worth playing. And then there's also 7 Tachyon Bonfire, which, by the way, is going to get limited, but it's not the end of the world, and also Desires has a very high likelihood of drawing into what you want. Everything is a 3 of, so you don't really care too much. Especially if you play 2 field spells, you feel much more confident using Desires. The whole Thruster, well, this is a card that is both a Ryzal and a whole normal trap card, which means that you can also send it with Trapshooter Flesia, which people are starting to cut slowly but surely, because they don't really want to play Gravedigger's Hole. It kind of is a brick, I understand. So yeah, we're seeing very minimalistic Ryzal deck list, so not a lot of like other engines or other cards from other archetypes, which again kind of makes sense because people are hand trapping you so much that you really need your hand to have as many juice live cards as possible. Moving forward, another deck list that is pretty much identical, but this time we're main decking Floodgates and trap cards. So Summon Limit, Double Summon, Summon Limit and Double Solemn Strike. I mean, Solemn Strike is just overall very nice. Even if you break, you set Solemn Strike and a bunch of cards, you have some hand traps, and then next turn you activate your one-card starter, your opponent ashes you, and then you go Strike, and then you get to play Yugimons, which is beautiful. We love that. Nothing else that's really worth explaining. Lancia, I guess. That's also a Solemn Judgment, because when your opponent evenlies you, you chain that, and then you survive. Not too bad, not too bad. And also, you usually kind of shotgun this on draw phase, so that if your opponent has Desires, then it's not going to do anything. It's not garbage at all, but it doesn't really affect the Ryzal engine whatsoever. But it's very good against Maliss, so I think Lancia is going to be gaining a lot in popularity next format. Keep your eye out on this card, even though it's very cheap. It's not like you gotta break the bank to afford Lancia or anything. Only 2 Molchemy 4 Auros in the main deck, and a 3rd in the side. I'm very confused, but I guess it's understandable because they also have 3 Maxi for now, and then Maxi is going to get semi-limited. I think over time, Maxi is going to get banned, honestly. You guys let me know how you feel about Maxi's future in the comment section. I really want to hear your thoughts. Anyways, Maliss is where it gets kind of interesting, because even though Ryzal is the best deck, as you can clearly see, I think Maliss is the better deck to play moving forward, just because it has that surprise factor. As a matter of fact, this is what is being explained right here. A lot of people were unprepared for Maliss, and because of the existence of Shifter, this is something that you really have to respect now, because if you play Shifter in Ryzal, then you look like a moron when you're facing Maliss, which is way better into Shifter, since you're almost helping them out. Like, all their monsters will now get their effects super easily. So if you imperm one of their monsters, they can just link off into a Link 1, and then summon back right away, and then they basically have access to a Link 2. And from here on out, they can maybe play the game. Yeah, this is honestly a very nasty threat. As soon as you get to summon your Maliss Link monsters, you get to stabilize yourself. The trap cards are really cool in this deck. As a matter of fact, I did consider playing this deck as a trap deck and not really as a combo deck. But I don't think this is how people really want to play this deck. I think there's like 17 hand traps or something here. 2 Shifter, 3 4 so that's 5, 8, 11, 14, 17. There we go. I said a random number. It was exactly 17. I swear to God, I spent so much time looking at these breakdowns that I think I just memorized just deck building patterns overall. Alright, the extra deck, nothing too relevant, just a bunch of Link monsters and the targets for the Terahertz. And the side deck has Dimensional Fissure, fun for everyone. Ultimate Slayer, so that you can send your Cyber's Desavworm or Aggregator. This is really insane against the Ryzal deck. So you get to bounce back their Detonator, and then you get to negate their field spell. And then they pretty much run out of interruptions. This is like your best friend against them. It is insane. Even if they Solemn Judgment your Ultimate Slayer, you still get value. You still get to send Aggregator to negate the Detonator, and you made them lose the Judgment. It is insane. It is such a good card on its own, you have to side deck 3 Ultimate Slayer next format. It is that insane. As a matter of fact, I can say right now, next format should be a board breaker format. Even though right now we're saying, oh, board breakers are good, I still think hand traps are better than board breakers right now. But yo, the board breakers against Ryzal, you don't need a lot of them. This reminds me a lot of Kashtira, where you're not making like actual negates, so your boards will always lose to like, I don't know, like Dark Ruler, Eclipse, Evenly, pretty much everything you can think of. But when you don't draw those cards and when you draw hand traps instead, they're very good at beating hand traps just because of the field spell. They have a lot of gas cards. They also play a lot of defensive cards, so just because you draw like one aggressive card, it doesn't really mean that you're gonna win. So you still have to watch out. And also they have Called by the Grave Crossout. Maybe in the TCG they're gonna be main decking 3 Crossout. We never know. This build is main decking some Bestial monsters. Maybe in the TCG we're gonna be seeing some actual dedicated Bestial builds, like Lubellion, multiple Baldrakes, multiple Drua's Worms, Saronir, Regained. That could make sense. That could be the kind of thing that I would play, personally, because I've already made a video on Maliss, and that was my take on it, so a Bestial-heavy approach. It's honestly not too bad. Tenpai Dragon, I also don't really want to waste too much time here, but Dominus Impulse apparently is a card that people have started cutting from the deck because it is not too great against Ryzal. They don't have a lot of effects that actually special summon. They have a lot of inherent summons from the hand, so this only negates like 3 effects. So it's really just Ice Ryzal to special summon from deck, Ryzal plugin, the spell card that Monster Reborns, and the whole Thruster to XC summon on the opponent's turn or even on your turn, I believe. So yeah, Impulse, not the best card. Yeah, the side deck, I don't really care. This deck list, it's very interesting to see Funnel Bringer's Bellow. So it's a quickly spell card that allows you to destroy 1 monster on your field and 1 card on your opponent's field. And it's you can only activate once per turn. So if you get impermanent on one of your monsters, then you can chain this. I think, yeah, it should be a quickly spell. It really should be. Hold on a second. I'm just gonna double check. Yeah, it is a quickly spell, and it is coming out in Rage of the Abyss. So keep your eye out on this card. And we are seeing 2 targets for Aerotic Seal. So Quakimeru Drago, and I forgot the name of this one, but on summon it gets to destroy 2 cards on the field. I think that's what it does. So it's really scary. Snake Eye, like I said, most builds are cutting the Azamina just because of Ghost Ogre and Jewel and Logbird. Very nasty cards against this. But still, we're still seeing some builds that are playing it. But they have Beatrice, so we're gonna be completely different because they can Beatrice into Mischief of the Gnomes, and that is basically a D-barrier against the Ryzal deck. Whereas, again, in the TCG, we don't have either Beatrice or Lacrimosa, so Azamina Snake Eye, I just don't think will be a thing once we get Ryzal. So I think you can just scrap this deck right now, and if you have it, maybe just play it for like the next event, and after that, it's probably just no longer worth playing, honestly. But yeah, in conclusion, the ban list really just made the best decks even better, because like, whatever, Snake Eye, Tenpai, and Yubel were weakened, but at the current moment, even before the ban list, Ryzal and Maliss were already the best decks, and now they're just gonna be even more the best decks. So again, to me, this ban list really just changed absolutely less than nothing. And also, another thing that I think is very interesting that has been said here is that at the moment, the best deck in the OCG is not the deck that has the highest ceiling, but rather the highest floor. So the difference between the floor and the ceiling is like the best case scenario. What is the absolute best thing that your deck can achieve? If your deck has a high ceiling, maybe it can make like 10 negates. Or if your deck has a very high floor, which is the worst case scenario, what is the best bad thing that you can do? Maybe even when you still get a hand shot multiple times, you can still make like 2-3 interruptions through like your worst nightmare. So this is the reason why you really need consistency, and you really need resilience and the ability to still hard make some forms of disruption, regardless of what your opponent has, which is the reason why Ryzal is just the best deck moving into the Rage of the Abyss format. But again, Maliss is a very strong contender. Anyways, you guys let me know how you feel about the format in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.